Can money always be used as a source of motivation? Well, in today's video, we're going to see how money could actually backfire and lead to people doing something in the opposite direction that you'd expect them to do. Let's look into it. So let's imagine that you owned a daycare and that you're getting annoyed that some parents are simply arriving late to pick up their kids. So just take a second and reflect and try to think about what can you do to make their incentives greater to come on time to show up. Well, every time I ask this question in class, I often get the idea of, well, if ever you arrive late, there could be a late fee, there could be a penalty, there could be something monetary or kind of a penalty or reward for arriving on time. That's the typical idea that we have because we often use money to control people's incentives, to incentivize people to act in a certain way. Well, in practice, in this daycare example, some daycares have tried putting a certain late fee penalty that could go up the more late you arrive and so on. And in practice, most of those examples have led to a situation that's completely different than the daycare managers would have expected. What they noticed is that by adding a fee, more parents would arrive late to pick up their kids. Take a second and try to see what may be causing this. And the general rule here is that there is extrinsic and intrinsic motivations. Intrinsic motivations are the motivations within you of trying to be a good citizen, being a good dad, just acting well for society, just different things that motivate yourself internally. And extrinsic motivations are things coming from the outside. So if someone's paying me money, that's coming from the outside. Well, in practice, in certain situations, extrinsic motivation crowds out intrinsic motivations. What we mean by this is if we go back to the daycare example, you could have a situation where people felt compelled to arrive on time to pick up their kids. They felt that they were being a good parent and they were being nice to the people that own the daycare, that run the daycare, that work there, that they too want to be able to head home at a certain time. They don't want to be waiting around for a parent. But all of a sudden, there's this extrinsic motivation that comes in, and how their behavior and how their thinking changes is, oh, if I arrive late, I'll face a penalty. Therefore, it's as if I'm paying for a service. I want to have the ability to pick up my kid half an hour late. That's no big deal. All I'd have to do is pay some money and they're going to keep it longer. It's going to compensate for their salaries and so on and so forth. So all of a sudden, instead of motivating people to arrive on time to avoid this penalty, you've fallen into a situation where these people are actually taking their time more because they feel as though they're paying for a service. Their feeling of guilt, that intrinsic feeling of guilt of arriving late, has dissipated, and this feeling of being offered a service and paying for it has arisen. So this feeling that they've paid for a service and that they don't feel guilty for it has come up. That's the way they feel now. Feel that this is now kind of like this mutual agreement. It's not, oh, I'm arriving late, therefore I'm creating something negative for this person. This person has told me what the agreement is. You arrive this amount late. This is your fee that you will have to pay. I've understood this agreement and therefore I'm simply paying for the service. Same kind of idea as if you think back in the days where you could rent DVDs or movies at the Blockbuster and you'd have a certain fee for renting, and if you chose not to return it on time, you'd have an extra fee. And all of that was pre-known, everyone was aware of this agreement, and therefore you're just paying for a service. So even though the incentive or the idea behind this is to make sure people bring things back on time, some people just see it as a cost for a certain service. Let's say there's a lack of a certain blood type in the community and you want to attract more people to give blood because it saves lives and so on. Well, a lot of people feel this sense of duty of doing this, but if you start paying them to getting blood, you have a situation where a lot of people that felt that it was a sense of duty all of a sudden think, well, I'm not doing this for the money. And they might be perceived by others that they're doing this for the money, but for some reason it kind of turns them off. And they've noticed with blood drives that there's actually less people that give blood when they start paying, which is counterintuitive. And this class is all about these counterintuitive situations. And last but not least, there's examples of people having to solve a puzzle, some people being paid a very small fee and some aren't. Well, naturally, the people are paying a small fee. They feel like they're doing it for work. It's not really much. Therefore, they are not really motivated, where the other people just kind of feel the challenge of solving a puzzle. For myself, examples I could think about is, let's say you hire me to be a guide or a yoga instructor or teaching a class, and you tell me, you're a friend of mine, and you tell me, hey, can you do this for me? And I do it just out of friendship and I want to help. But if you tell me, can you do this for me and I'll give you $10, I'm like, all of a sudden I feel like I'm getting paid, but not my full value, what I should be getting paid. So even though that extra money should be seen as, oh, this is good, you're giving me money, it's just a bonus. Sometimes that feels like that's what you're paying me. That's kind of how you perceive my value. And all of that intrinsic motivation just kind of dissipates. So you have to keep all of that in mind when you're trying to motivate people. So keep in mind that there is intrinsic, extrinsic motivations. Some come internally. And what you want to do is you want to keep people's intrinsic motivations. And if you want to motivate them more, try to think about different ways you could do so without kind of pushing that aside. So that's going to be your challenge. And this week's kind of homework and work is to try to find different ways to motivate people without crowding out internal motivations that they already had. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you in the next one. If you found this video interesting, please consider subscribing or joining my class where I guide you to apply and expand on the information found in these videos to real life examples. Have a good day.